Hey guys, and welcome to a battle between myself under the guise of Melon Lord up against the mighty warrior Pippington, representing the double C here. We are on the mighty grounds of Troll Country, particularly close quarters affair, expecting it to be pretty crazy stuff. And it's a good map for the Lizardmen in this matchup, in my humble opinion. They can suddenly get in, start swarming the DAWI back lines straight from the off, and it can be a really bad time throughout for gun lines, thunderers, quarrelers, and artillery pieces. So we've actually only gone with one artillery piece, which of course is going to be our favourite flame cannon. And apart from that, we're trying to bring the elite DAWI box back and make it sexy once more. In the back lines, you do have two units of Slayers, one of which is the Giant Slayers, the other are Dragon Back. And in the central pockets, we have Ironbreakers flanking either side of that flame cannon. One of them are the Regiment of Renown, and these guys are cheering, just taunting the Lizardmen folk. Bring your face to my axe. In the central, just ahead of them as well, in the central force, we do have double hammers, one of which is the Peak Gate Guard, the Regiment of Renown. You come with a regal, glorious blue colour scheme, as well as armour sundering and magic damage. Now, the magic damage isn't going to be too helpful here up against the Dino forces, but that armour sundering certainly can do a pretty decent job. Grombrindle is going to be the dwarf leading our forces here today. I think his flash bomb is simply too good to not bring up against people who can bring gigantic creatures, which can really push into your back line and start stomping all over you. We also have triple miners with blasting charges. These are the only guys in our build who are pretty cheap, to be honest, and very good value for money as well, just to absorb the initial damage and do some pretty good burst as well back to those skinks. Now, around Pippington's build is very cool. We have some skink cohorts of javelins on the flanks. These guys, of course, are here to Kobe those javelins into Slayers and try to drag down the unarmoured dwarfs. And there's a bucket ton of red-crested skinks, mixed in with a few skink cohorts dotted all the way along. These bad boys have pretty decent AP. Couple units of cavalry, we have the Cold One Riders, again relatively cheap armour piercing, which you certainly need in abundance up against the might of the DAWI Throng. We also have the Thunderous One alongside Zlak and Lord Mazda Mundi. I bring this as well. I'm a massive fan of the giant Stagons in this matchup. Then you may be confused why Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes, cannons and so forth can really drag them down, which is true, but Lord Mazda Mundi coming in with Apotheosis, as we can see here, as well as his missile resistance he gives to nearby threats, will beat every single unit in the DAWI roster, apart from giant slayers and so forth, but you can kind of fend them off with banishments and other stuff. So you just need to get in there, and if they make it in there, it is an absolute nightmare for dwarf players to really deal with. Over here, hidden in Vanguard, we've got two Repidactyl Riders. Units we don't get to see terribly often, so I'm very excited to see how these guys perform. Basically flying piranhas with anti-infantry and armour piercing. So on paper they should be good up against the dwarfs, but they are a little bit brittle as well. Flame Cannon is going to be unleashing some hell upon the red-crested skinks. Looks like the volley's not doing too bad so far. Got this unit down to about half health. The second unit is about to receive a second salvo, and boom, clipping the edges of the formation. Not doing too much damage just yet, but overall, some pretty big kills straight out of the gate, up to 35 off the rip. Repidactyl Riders are starting to ride around the back of my formation, and I have no Thunderers or Quarrelers to really threaten these guys. So if my opponent had gone triple Pterodons, which is kind of common in this matchup, there's nothing I could have done to save the Flame Cannon. So we were playing it a little bit risky here. Flame Cannon continues to rain pressure down on the red crests as well as the normal skink cohorts. Those shots landing smack bam in the middle. Oh my god! The amount of blood that comes flying out of the poor little skinks are actually going to break before they even hit the front line. Blasting charge is being thrown in as well, but in comes the Thunderous One with a big charge, those huge tusks skewering at dwarf miners. And on the far side, Mazda Mundi as well. And I like the fact my opponent has split both of these bad boys up to ensure Slayers can't pressure both of them at the same time. Likewise, Grombrindle. Big banishment comes down on the Peak Gate Guard. For the most part, managed to avoid the threat there. Flame Cannon continues to rain in fire on the red-crested, who do start to approach. On the left-hand flank, Ironbreakers have been hit by the Cold One Riders. Luckily, the shield wall just about holds. It starts to buckle in the middle, and all of a sudden, Mazda Mundi's getting there as well. Ironbreakers, though, have fantastic mass, and actually holding back the tide of enemies so far, hopefully allowing me to deal with the threat of the Thunderous One over on this side. Repidactyl Riders were getting a little bit cheeky, going into the Ironbreakers in the back, who are currently blasting some skink cohorts to smithereens. Looks like Repidactyls are starting to swarm into the middle, as both big dinosaurs do come together for the first time. Grombrindle pumping at those dwarven legs as he chunks down the Bugmans and gets ready for battle. Huge strike comes down from the Thunderous One with that magical damage he can bring to the table. It looks like we are throwing blasting charges into those Repidactyl Riders, and in comes the Flash Bomb, which is going to be huge. Thunderous One getting put to the sword. Grombrindle is an angry boy indeed, with Giant Slayers here to help support. he's taken a huge amount of damage, but there is healing to be coming in from Mazdamundi, of course, and so far the Lizardmen have done a really good job of pushing us back into kind of more of a little box and isolating troops as well, and this is where Mazdamundi really shines. He can bounce between units and do some pretty good work. With the Peak Gate Guard, still doesn't want to tussle with them for too long. He's splattering a few of them, but those mighty hammers will get to work, chugging down big old blobs of that Lord Mazdamundi's health. Culverin Riders slowly getting dragged down, likewise the Ripidactyl Riders. Hammers are slowly seen to them, combined in with the Dragonback Slayers, which is a pretty deadly combo. And over on this side, 2 units of the Red-Crested Skinks are being held back by a single unit of Ironbreakers, which is absolutely fine by me, as the Giant Slayers continue to try and chase and pursue these Cold Run Riders. Unfortunately, they're a little bit faster than our little stunty legs can take us, so I'm going to be able to escape. And now my Giant Slayers are a little bit isolated, so I certainly want to bring them back to support the rest of the build where possible. Peak Gate Guard and the Hammers are starting just to charge into the Red-Crested Skinks with gusto here. And yeah, Red-Crested Skinks, sure, they do armor-piercing damage, but the Hammers should be able to splatter their brains on the ground with some big swings of their mighty hammers. On the far side, the Ironbreakers, who initially got hit pretty bad, are actually managing to destroy the Red-Crested Skinks and hold the line on the left-hand side. Likewise, on this other side, where are our Ironbreakers gone? Oh, here they are. Nogrim's Ironbreakers are now charging into the fray onto those Skink cohorts. With their mighty axes, they'll be able to cleave these guys apart. And honestly, Skink cohorts have pretty pitiful stats throughout. They're more of a swarming unit. So up against the rocking at 125 armor of the Ironbreakers, there is certainly no hope for these Skinks to really do much damage at all. Though it looks like some Colin Riders have been rather sneaky, wrapping around the flanks, looking to try and get some nice rear attacks coming in, as the Thunderous One does start to pound down the Ironbreakers. I'm going to have to abandon them a little bit at the moment. Grombrindle has eyes on the prize, and that prize is the mighty Zlak, as well as the majority of our forces, who are starting to form one big iron fist. Now, what is the bigger number, 5 or 1? It is 1, because it is a mighty ironclad fist of the DAWI. And it's pushing forward, going after Lord Mazdamundi, trying to chase him down. Dragonback Slayers, of course, if they do engage in combat with him. This guy, I think, has a javelin straight through his arm. He just cares not, still charging quite happily. And a flash bomb going down. Mazdamundi even taking a few blasting charges there accidentally. With the White Dwarf on tow, should do some massive burst damage to Mazda. It looks like the Thunderous One is going to have to respond here, coming to try and save his buddy. Skink cohorts are retreating. However, I would love to see the net on Lord Mazdamundi to try and get him away from situations like this, but I understand as well trying to go cheap and cheerful. Cold-Blooded has been popped to keep him in action, and now it's the Thunderous One's turn to get beat down. So surrounded by Giant Slayers, Hammerers, all these mighty dwarvish elite warriors of old, they're doing a pretty good job, although it looks like a banishment is about to hit us, which is some pretty scary stuff. Luckily, the Thunderous One kind of goes away, so we can kind of try to pursue it away. But oh my god, that banishment is just butchering so many dwarves, as I call them elves there. So they won't be too happy about that. Big lightning strikes coming down as well, but luckily the banishment at last does abate and go in a different direction. Nice isolation by my opponent, realising that Ironbreakers by themselves on this flank, drops in with both Ripidactyls and Mazdamundi, slaughtering those dwarfs with deadly efficiency. Good pick up there by the Dino Force. Thunderous One is going to be retreating here. We're desperately trying to chase him down, but not too much we can do. My opponent is going to be able to pick and choose his fights. That is kind of one of the weaknesses of the DAWI folk. But we do have some blasting charges left on our Ironbreakers, so we're going to be trying to get those into the Skink cohorts where possible to do some nice damage. And as you can see, the shots are now coming in and roasting some of those bad boys. Ripidactyl Riders in the back lines trying to shut down the miners with blasting charges, though some of the hammers are going to be moving over to this flank to engage with them. The Peak Gate Guard, when they fight beside you, you want to hold your ground, and the miners somehow sticking to their guns here. More hammers have pushed out onto this left-hand side to engage with the Skink cohorts. Grombrindle, as well, is always lurking, just waiting to drop one of those flash bombs onto Mazda if he gets a little bit too close. It looks like it is the Thunderous One who has decided to come into the centre of our build, and Grombrindle has once again popped that bomb. It's probably one of the most vital items in the DAWI roster. It's so good, and that's why I think you see Grombrindle so oftenly picked. Giant Slayers getting in here, Grombrindle getting in here, down to below 1,000 health now for the Thunderous One. It is going to be breaking and running for its life. Mazdamundi this time trying to repay the favour the Thunderous One did earlier on and getting in here and saving him. But the balanced power is going more and more in our favour as both Ripidactyl Riders do break. Mazdamundi is still going strong, but the Cold Ones unfortunately rampaging. Now they're rampaging up against Ironbreakers, Slayers, Grombrindle. These guys are suddenly getting dragged down from their mighty steeds, pulled into the muck and dirt of the dwarvish battle line. Yeah, those Cold Ones down to just 2 models will be shattering pretty soon. Mazdamundi looking to go for one last suicide charge back in. Now, the Thunderous one has rallied up to 117 kills as well. Done a pretty good job moving these large creatures all around so far. Going a ramrod in there back into the main fray. Peak Gate Guard, though, doesn't matter how weakened they are. Only 24 models left on these guys and very low HP. They continue to fight and applying that armor sundering, which is going to help the Slayers, Miners, Grombrindle, everyone just doing more and more damage to these large creatures. Mazdamundi, though, still putting on a pretty good show. Apotheosis coming down and Cold Blood to keep him alive. And some of the Riptidactyls have managed to return to the fray. If they can break a lot of my Hammers and Miners, they're probably going to be able to cycle charge down Grombrindle, as the Slayers are pretty much spent at this point. Any big tear-outs would be nice as well. The Mighty Dwarves, pretty hard force to break in general. Big lightning strikes coming down. Riptidactyl Riders as well, chewing their way through the Peak Gate Guard here. But down the Thunderous one falls. And without his buddy, Lord Mazdamundi and Zlak shall be fleeing from the battlefield. And a Pyrrhic victory to the mighty us. Well played to Pippington, though. Absolutely fabulous player. Really lovely, chill dude as well. If you ever do see him on Quick Battles, feel free to say hi to him. He's a super nice dude. I'm sure as well he'd be happy to give tips and tricks to people. And managed to get my lucky little win here off against him. And maybe he wasn't expecting this kind of build. Going Elite Dwarf is something you don't really see too much in recent times. Dwarfs in general, I think the game in general, it's always good to go very wide at the moment. You know, big 20, 19, 18 stacks. And Dwarfs are the masters of that, coming with loads of Thunderers, Onioning, and so forth. And I still think it is the best way to play Dwarfs, but it's like about just Elite Dwarvish, like Hammers and Ironbreakers, Slayers, some of their cool units they can bring, like Flame Cannons. I always personally love to see them in action. So that's all we had today. And it did manage to work just about. Again, very well played to Pippington. I think the MVPs for me certainly were those Hammerers coming in there and doing a big old walloping to their enemy. And the Ironbreakers holding the line is always a good time. Look at those kills across the board. Pretty insane stuff. But we'll get to damage value in just a second. If you guys enjoyed, feel free to hit that big old fat thumbs up button. And subscribe if you haven't already for more Total War Warhammer content. Down below in the description, there are links to my Discord if you'd like to send in replays. I've done a few replays of myself recently, so we're probably going to be spreading back out once again more to replays from other people a little bit more. So yeah, feel free to send replays there, get involved in weekly challenges, tournaments, events, keep up to date with the channel, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, and if you want to support the channel in any other way, obviously apart from just being here and saying hello, you can comment down below or join my Patreon. There's a link in the description to that. But very well played to Pippington. Mazdamundi coming in, 93 kills. Always a big fan of seeing the mighty Zlak in action. 2,039 damage value. Certainly not too shabby, because considering he only brought Apotheosis as I think his only spell there. I would definitely like to see the net, just to get him out of some of those sticky situations he found earlier on. Also, netting and banishing and ruination combos can be really deadly, but still, I do like the pick. Likewise, the Thunderous one. I've raved about this guy so much on the channel, you're probably bored of me saying it now, but he is so good. 2,637 damage value, an absolute monster for the cause. 13k damage dealt. The Riptidactyl Riders didn't fare too terrible. 711 damage value on one unit, but the other one, 1,138. They're pretty expensive, very glass cannon, but I can certainly see them working quite well here. Very risky in the skies, though, if there is going to be Thunderers and Quarrel of Pressure focusing them down. You kind of have to leave them to the end game a little bit there. Cold Blood Riders did struggle a little bit, 343 and 552 damage value, and in this matchup, I've also kind of struggled with Cold Blood Riders a little bit. I don't know what it is, they just seem to take too long to grind through the enemy. I think Crocscore are a bit more of a safer choice, but again, Cold Blood Riders do give you that mobility, which may be what Pippington was going for there, and across the board, the Skink cohorts, or the Red Crested Skinks, I should say, didn't fare too great due to the warriors they were up against. But if it was against a normal battle line of Dwarf warriors and miners, these guys would have done a really fantastic job. But how did our elite warriors do? Well, we'll start from the bottom, the Flame Cannon. Only 740 damage value, nothing too crazy to get shut down relatively early on, but still did some nice burst damage to those Red Crests and stopped them getting value back. So that's kind of really where the power of such a kind of chaff clearing unit can sometimes come from. 99 kills really forced the initiative onto my opponent and be like, hey, you got to come to me, buddy, or I'm going to start annihilating your troops. As for the Norgremlins Ironbreakers, always a good unit to take. 1,315 damage value is pretty impressive stuff. 10k damage dealt and 162 kills. The Hammerers, in fact, the Peak Gate Guard, 8,000 damage dealt, but 1,691 damage value, 69 kills as well. Bow chicka bow wow, and that was some awesome display by them. But the armor sundering as well, so good. This may be a matchup where they could be maybe a little bit viable. Ironbreakers, 1.6k damage value as well, 12k damage dealt and 100 kills. The Giant Slayers and the other Slayers performing fantastically. There wasn't really many Skink Skirmishers. Terran Rise up in the skies to focus these guys down. and because the banishments needed to be used on hammers and other such units, these guys, although it looks like they did pretty much get slaughtered to the last man, came through with some pretty good work. 2,397 damage value on the Giant Slayers, 1,748 on the Dragonbacks, and the basic unit of hammers 1.5. Miners across the board didn't fare too well, just getting shut down really early on by the might of Mazdamundi. Pimpington, obviously an experienced player, knows that if you chuck those big dinos into those blaster charges, they're not going to do too much. The White Dwarf, only a very humble 869 damage value, 3k damage dealt, but those flash bombs were very key, and it's all about timing with the Dwarfs if you can pull apart those large creatures, and Flash Bomb is the reason I think Grombrino is the best DAWI Lord by a considerable margin at the moment. I think they're pretty much a must, because Rune Smiths and Rune Lords aren't amazing, so, you know, to get the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, you kind of have to go with one of them, so I think the Flash Bomb is a little bit better bang for your buck. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, peace. And as always, stay awesome.